Hey guys, Kyle here, and I am with you in snapshot 23W16A, where they just added a /return command, which I'll be covering today because it seems pretty well-rounded and doesn't seem like it will change too much in the future. Hopefully that comment is not something I regret. But essentially, the return command is pretty straightforward. It does what you would expect if you are familiar with programming languages. It lets you stop a function, which something tells me they added this because somebody at Mojang decided that they would try to write functions and found out that recursion is annoying. And so they were like, okay, this is something we need. So the way that you use return is it basically lets you return a value that will then be used as a return statement in a command, which is kind of like pretty useful. But then you go to the next step where it's even more useful in the fact that it actually stops the further execution of code in a branch. And so it doesn't stop all execution of code, it just stops a branch, which is super useful. And so here I have an example where we're going to go to every armor stand and store a score on them after they run the raycast code. And the raycast code is going to move forward by one block recursively, placing a glass block. But if it sees a block of stone, it will return with 1. And if it sees a block of dirt, it will return with 2. And if I run that function, you'll see that it ran 46 commands and it returned 2. It stopped at the dirt and the stone. This guy has a score of 2, this guy has a score of 1, just like you would expect to happen. So this is pretty useful because before, when you're doing a raycast, you would need to have some condition like a score or something to make sure that it stops, and even then the commands would still run. And so if you wanted to make it not place glass, you would need to add the condition here. So I have the exact same functionality inside this second raycast. Of course, it cannot return what block it found, which is another bonus of this return, but it is the same functionality. It takes 42 commands and it does the same thing physically. But let's say I want to, if you want to modify certain things, it can get a little bit tricky. So if you were instead trying to stop if you hit a entity, then you need to add an unless check for the entity into here, and it makes your raycast really messy, possibly less efficient. This just helps clean things up and stops your code early, stops it when you need it to stop. So other than that, there actually are a couple more applications for the return command. I'm sure that you can start thinking of them if you think really hard. One such application is making trees non-linear in their access, and a lot of big words there, but the point is, if you have a scoreboard tree where you say is score between 1 and 10 or 11 and 20, run this function and you kind of branch your way down to the score. In those trees, they used to have the ideal amount of commands would be 8 per function, and it would result in a uniform amount of commands to access that tree. But if you use return statements when you actually find the thing you're looking for, then you can make it non-uniform so that things at the top of the tree or the lower value of scores will take less commands to run, at the cost of the entire thing taking slightly more commands to run, or maybe one more command to run, and of course not being uniform. So that's one application I immediately thought of besides raycasting. There are a ton of others, like inside recursion. I have done a thing that does recursion for checking an area of blocks, and I cannot tell you how many times I've been a little bit annoyed by all of the extra checks you have to add in to prevent the thing from going past where you are trying to stop at. So it's definitely going to be a little bit of a time saver and a little bit of a headache saver. And the ability to return an integer is also nice so that you can know why the execution stopped. So you can really think of the return function as the same thing as a return function in any C program, in the sense that it's meant for you to stop the execution of your code and maybe tell you why the code was stopped. Anyways, if you thought that was cool, let me know what you want to see next. Hopefully there will be more snapshots with more cool things to discuss. Anyways, I will see you next time. Peace.